that comes later. So you're right, pee first.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
What an
So
odd.
all those bits are for peeing, and then the boobs is for for breastfeeding. So it's for feeding baby.
Mm,
There you go.
mm. Well,
Yeah.
speaking of boobs, uh, let's chat
Yes.
about the
Yes.
wonders of breast milk.
Yes.
And I guess quick background from my perspective,
Mm.
I did not birth my children. Breast milk was something completely new to me in terms of its, miracle nature.
Yeah.
And when your sister and I spoke about your business and she was telling me all about it, I was just like, oh my God, like I had no idea any of this because obviously I didn't have breast milk and I didn't really need to talk to anyone about it because it wasn't an option for me, I guess, to some degree. But
Mm.
what was it about what was happening in your life that made you decide to kind of go down this path? Like what kind
Desperation.
of sparked your interest in and that?
Anxiety and desperation. No, I will talk about it. There was I think I only ever did like one Instagram post about it. I didn't speak about it enough, although I'm a huge advocate for it, which is a bit,
Mm.
contradicting. But there is this thing that happens after childbirth. So everybody knows about postpartum depression, right? You've heard of it, and everybody,
I
like for
mean,
the
I
most
definitely feel like I got it without having given birth. I
shit.
definitely I was experiencing something very visceral.
But was it anxiety though? Was it maybe, what do you think, postpartum anxiety?
Honestly, I think it was just pure. I don't know what the hell I'm doing because I got handed a 9-month-old,
Yeah.
and nothing prepares you, I guess, to some degree for that. Especially because if you don't have 9 months to prepare, you're just kind of here you
Yeah,
go be a
that's true. You
parent.
don't have nine
So
months to read
I think a
about
lot of
or
mine was no, I didn't even read much because I think in my mind, based on the conversations we were having with the social workers and stuff, it felt like it was never going to happen. So,
mm,
I mean, don't get me wrong, I somewhat read things and I was looking up, but I genuinely didn't think it was going to happen. And then you get the call, and then 2 weeks later, there's a 9-month-old in your house. I think I would kind of say I don't know if it was depression, but I definitely cried a lot.
oh
There was a
yeah.
lot of crying. There was a lot of hopelessness. There was a lot of what am I doing?
I
I
want to say you
feel,
were probably going through um your baby's regression as well.
at 9 months. Well,
Yeah, I
and
think
the other
eight,
thing
nine
is,
months there's
it's
a big
such a
regression.
complicated thing.
Yeah.
Well, and also because we had to concentrate on what do you call it? You had to concentrate on the bond,
Mm.
not so much anything else. Because as a woman that gives birth, the bond and all that kind of stuff does come through that process, whereas ours had to come not not
Finish.
naturally, but it had to be there.
I want to say the
Yeah.
bond doesn't. This is a bit controversial because not. I feel like until recently, not a lot of people actually came out and said it. But when your baby arrives, for the ones that do
They
have it,
expect.
I'm so happy for them. But
Mm.
for instantly for you to fall in love with your baby the second your baby is put on your chest, I want to say that didn't happen to me. It was not immediate, and I
No,
thought it was weird. And
100%.
truthfully, you're
Yeah.
being handed a human. Yeah, you feel him in your belly and stuff, but nothing but kicks. I mean, no, you're not having conversations. There's no eye contact. You know
Mm.
what I mean? Like this is a perfect stranger
Yeah,
that's
yeah, yeah.
being handed to you. You've never seen his face before. So I mean, I
Yeah.
feel like you didn't miss out on too much in terms of like you didn't
Mm.
bond while your baby was in your belly. You know?
No, and that's a good point because one of the biggest conversations I've had with adoptive parents. So one of the things we get told a lot is, "Oh, you're so lucky. How lucky are you?" And there's this big element of guilt that happens because yes, you are 100% lucky. Like, holy crap, this whole thing is just amazing. But you are also looking after a brand new baby that you don't know what you're doing. You've never had the experience. And so you are. And like, one of the things I said to one of the adoptive parents that I was talking to, because she was really struggling a little bit. And I just said to her, oh mate, you do not like them. Like you will do anything for them and they're your child. but you don't feel that immediately. Like that is not a thing that's like an immediate situation. And all these people that keep telling how lucky you are and all this kind of stuff, and you just build up guilt and guilt and guilt because you're
Mm,
like, I'm not enjoying this. And I'm sure there are people out there that enjoy the very early stages of babyhood and things like that. From 9 months till Ev could walk, hated it. Like, just hated it. I loved her.
yeah,
I love grew for my kids so easily, but it did grow. It was a growing situation.
yeah.
It was definitely not immediate first love at first sight. Um, but oh my God, I hated that period of time. I was just like miserable. No sleeping.
No.
You're constantly worried about everything. Am I feeding them enough? Are they getting enough nutrition? What does this poo look like? It looks funny. Should I take them to the hospital? Like that is just for me. Oh,
I think
struggle
you're an
street.
anxious person
Struggle.
as well, so it makes it
Hugely.
so much worse. Because if,
Oh yeah.
if people who didn't start off being anxious and then go through postpartum with their
Mm.
baby and stuff, like you'll get anxiety for sure. But you put that on top of
Oh
somebody
yeah.
that already has like major anxiety issues. Like I'm not surprised that you
Mm.
really struggled. And yeah, of course you
Oh,
shouldn't
it
feel
was.
guilty at all. Like it's we all feel guilty all the
I
time,
give.
no matter whether you're doing a good job or not. I think that's the
Mm,
whole point,
that's
right?
so true.
But
100%.
I was gonna say that I was a huge advocate for something. So I said, yeah, there was postpartum. This is how we veered off, by the way.
Mm,
I was like, there's postpartum depression, postpartum anxiety,
little train.
and then there was
Mm,
there was this other thing, which I was convinced that I had postpartum anxiety. I didn't think I had postpartum depression at all.
mm.
One of my best friends, actually the person that I it's not decided to have Remy with, but you know, like she was, we were very, very, very close, and she'd already had one child, and it was one drunken night with margaritas where she was like, I kind of want a second one, and I was like, I kind of want to have my first one. And we're like, should we do it together? So we timed the whole thing. We literally got pregnant at the same time, and I
Did
took
it
her.
work?
Yeah,
Oh,
they're like,
yeah.
I think a few, maybe 5 days apart or something like that.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, it was
Mm,
really, really cool. Anyway, so she got postpartum depressions, which was really, really rough. And so it was really nice for us to talk to each other because I had the postpartum anxiety. But from everything that I read, because you know, like when you're breastfeeding 14,000 times a night, there's a lot of scrolling. You know, you want to learn more, you're reading
oh,
more. Yeah, I was like
the
constantly.
internet is a good thing and a bad thing.
But it was a really good thing in this sense because I
Mm,
was researching it and I was like, well, I definitely have anxiety, but there's something more, and I felt like it was just not like doing a good enough job of describing what it was that I was experiencing. And so just to
mm.
put it very simply, every time that I breastfed, I got a panic attack. And so
Oh, wow.
yeah, like every time. And that's when I was like, well, that's doesn't make it, because for me it means that there's something triggering it, because it's you know, there's your common
Mm,
denominator is that. And then there was also like every time that he cried, I feel like he reached a certain pitch or something like that, and then that would trigger another
and then it
panic
just,
attack.
mm,
And so I had a lot of them, and it was really, really rough. Like I couldn't, you know, there were times where I was
rough.
just like tunnel vision, and I was like really freaking out, and I felt like I was gonna die. And I was like, well, I have a baby, I can't die
Yeah,
right now.
yeah.
I gotta pass him on to somebody
Yeah,
before I
which
pass
which
away.
puts added pressure on it. It's like not that I don't want to die because I don't want to die, but I don't want to die because I'm leaving someone and they need me.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
need to make sure he's
which is
safe
the real
first.
height of motherhood.
Exactly. You don't
Yeah.
give a crap about yourself, you give a crap about your baby. And and so it was like one late night scrolling on Reddit, because I was on every mother breastfeeding
Oh yeah.
postpartum forum that there was in existence.
Mm,
And there was one article with this lady talking about something called DMER. So it's DMER, which was stands for
mm.
dysphoric milk ejection reflex.
Ooh,
Yeah, so
sounds
essentially,
sexy.
yeah, doesn't it? I had Dreamer.
Oh yeah.
But essentially what happens is that there's like a shift in your hormones, right? That when your baby
Mm.
starts like
Oh yes.
breastfeeding, it sends a signal to your brain, and then your brain is like, okay, we got to get all these hormones in these levels, and then those hormones are going to go back to your boob and then let the milk down. And so it was at the
Mm.
milk letdown, or like the shift in hormones, that triggered the panic attacks. But things that
Oh
happen
wow.
also at the beginning of breastfeeding is that if you hear your baby cry, that can trigger a milk letdown as well. So, that's when you
Yeah.
just all of a sudden start leaking through your bra for the world to see. So it's stuff like that. And I was like, oh crap, this is what I have. This absolutely has to be. And so I was like, I had really good midwives at the time. And I was like texting one of my
Mm.
midwives and I was like, well, I think I have Deemer. And she was like, what is that? And I was like, oh, so I had to explain to her.
Well, let me tell you.
And then so she referred me to a lactation consultant. She was like, okay, so look, only 9% of women
Mm.
have this. And there was like, she gave me a bunch of books to read up on, and she was like, it should stop like at 6 months, between 6 and I think 9 months or something like that. Mine lasted way longer than
Which
that.
is still rough.
It's
Like,
fucking
even
rough.
though you know that there's a timeline.
Yeah, but it was completely wrong because mine lasted like, I think 16 months or something like that when it
Yes.
actually stopped. But yeah, it
Felt
was,
like it wasn't there, yeah.
oh my god, it lasted forever. And the worst part is like, you can't not breastfeed. That was something that
Mm.
that my midwife was like, if it's too bad, we can just switch to formula. And I was like, well, I don't want to do that because then I'm a bit of a little bitch, aren't I? Suck it up and just keep breastfeeding your son even though
But
you're going through
I was
hell.
gonna say that's a big question though, because there is that element of like breastfeeding sounds horrendous. I am thrilled I didn't do it. But I think one of the things is like if it's doing something to you
Yeah,
that is, physically, emotionally, the whole thing. Like I've heard about this mastitis, and I'm sorry, that sounds
I got it once. It was
heinous.
rough. It's rough. It
So
escalates
sorry,
really quickly as well.
mm,
I was like within,
sounds horrendous.
yeah, it was awful. It's so fucking painful. And for the most part, they really let you get to the brink of, you know, the infection and sepsis before they're like, okay, here, have some antibiotics. Because you're not really supposed to have that when you're breastfeeding.
Yeah, when you're breastfeeding.
So yeah, so I had that once, but it was fine. And but yeah, so essentially that's what happened. So I had the dysphoric milk ejection reflex. I also had an oversupply. So my freezer was just filling up day after day with
Mm,
breast milk, and my son used to suffer from really really bad nappy rashes. Like I'm talking
mm,
raw, sometimes bleeding,
mm.
like really rough. And it would
Yeah.
last like four
Mm,
days. And I was the crazy woman that would change the diaper every hour and take photos of the area and shove the phone in my husband's
yeah.
face, going like, does this look different? Is it any better? I'm like, go crazy here.
Is there any improvement?
Do you
Yeah.
see it? I'm blind, I can't tell. But yeah,
Uh,
so I obviously spoke to my midwife about it, and she was like, throw some breast milk on there, it's going to be great, and it works for everything. Use it for conjunctivitis, ears,
mm,
nose, acne, anything. I was like,
whole,
sweet. So
yeah,
I just,
whole plethora.
just like quickly,
Yeah.
because the cool thing about breastfeeding is it's on tap. You can just go quick
It's right
slurp.
there.
It's right
It
there.
is
Just
right
turn the
there.
tap on. And so it was great, and it did make it heal quicker. But yeah, I
Mm,
was at the time I was kind of deep into my cosmetic formulation. I was like, if this was a cream, it would
mm,
be so much better because it doesn't run off the
mm.
skin so quickly. At some point, what I did was actually I would take,
The absorption.
yeah, I would take cotton pads and I would
Mm.
embalm, imbued. What's the word I'm looking for?
Soak.
Soak. Why do I have to go fancy? Just soak those damn
You
cotton
went
pads. I
fancy.
went fancy.
Yeah.
So I would soak those
Let's
cotton
get
pads.
Aussie about this. So,
Yeah, just soak them up. So yeah, I would just soak them up with breast milk, and then I would actually put him on each butt
yeah.
cheek because I was like, it has to stay on there for an extended amount of time for it to do a good job. It needs to absorb all that good
Mm.
stuff. And that was good, but it was just could have been better. So I was like, actually, breast milk is great,
Yeah.
but there's also all of these other really cool ingredients that you can add that speeds up the healing and takes down inflammation and stuff like that. So that's how I started doing that. I had a freezer full of stuff to test with. Still more breast milk
I was going
coming
to say,
in.
how long did it take you, do you think, where you felt like you'd gotten it kind of right? Like, what
I
was that looking like?
I think I started. I did a bunch of tests. Actually, I tested it all on my husband. Because we used to have
Zach has beautiful
he's
skin.
got gorgeous skin now. But we used to have so many roses in the garden because he was absolutely obsessed with, taking care of them and stuff like that. And he would always come back
Mm.
with these like little minor scratches. I'd be like, "Oh, come here, I've got a new one. Let's just rub that on, see how it
Ooh.
goes."
Mm.
So he was definitely my test subject. But I would say I was I think 6 or 7 months before I found the formulation that I was happy with, that wasn't giving him,
Hmm.
a bad reaction. And
Yeah, yeah.
I would test it on myself. Like if I got pimples and stuff, I would just dab some on, and then the next day they'd be gone. It was quite
I
nice.
was gonna say you bring up a good point. So something obviously when I started just looking into this and investigating, one of the big um, research papers that I looked at was now they're doing adult trials with breast milk, which I
Mm,
find obviously fascinating.
yeah.
And one of the big key takeaways was obviously eczema and acne, which is something that I found really interesting. That you know, being a child that grew up in the 90s, with very little skincare as being a major function for preteens and
Yeah.
for that age group. Yeah, it was like I remember everyone was on some sort of Roaccutane or,
Yeah.
um, burning the ever living shit out of their skin with some sort of skin
It's either a physical scrub or an acid.
scrub.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, all the time. So I found that to be one of the most fascinating parts because, imagine being able to kind of help with, I mean, when I was reading it, it was hormonal acne more than it was cystic acne,
Oh,
I want
yeah,
to
yeah,
say.
yeah.
Um, which I think would still be quite interesting to see how it would go with cystic acne because that wasn't something that they were testing it on.
Yeah.
Um,
I
but
think
just the
cystic
healing
acne is
side of it.
is a bit of a strange one just because it's so deep. I'd say probably at the end of the
Mm,
life of the actual acne, as it gets
mm,
closer to the surface, then maybe you'd be able
service, yeah.
to speed it up. If anybody actually wants to be a guinea pig and gets chronic cystic acne, just happen to
I
have breast
mean,
milk
give
on,
us a call.
give us a
Yeah.
call. We'll give you free breast milk to try it out and see how it goes. But yeah, definitely at the end of the life.
When
Yeah.
when you first started it and looked at the cream, you obviously gave a lot of it out to a lot of friends, and people that you knew in terms of their kids and stuff like that. What were the major call outs that they said in terms of what was something that they were using it on that kind of surprised them how quickly things were healing? Like
Eczema.
obviously there is nappy rash, which
Hmm.
yeah, I was gonna say, was it the eczema?
Eczema was the biggest one because it's the one that people were most desperate for, which is completely
Yeah.
understandable. We never had any eczema in our family, and Remy never suffered from it. But I can imagine that. I've heard moms like they say they wake up, the kids wake up in the morning and they've scratched themselves bloody. Like how awful! You wake up and you take your kids out of the bed and there's blood in the
Mm,
bed sheets. Like I would freak out.
yeah.
His tiny
Yeah.
little blood drop on his diaper was enough to freak me out. I can't imagine the full thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, that was definitely, and I feel like when I grew up, eczema wasn't a huge deal. I feel like I only met like one person who
Was
had
this?
eczema. Is
Yeah.
it more common now? I don't understand what's happening, but it's definitely super
I think
common now.
social media plays a game in that because obviously more people are talking about it and more people um I would also embarrassment plays a little bit of a
Mm,
part in that as people wouldn't tell people that they had eczema um generally at school and stuff like that because I agree I never really heard of anyone having
mm.
eczema. I think Kim Kardashian has it, so
Psoriasis. She's got
it's a big topic.
psoriasis.
Oh, she's got
Yeah,
psoriasis. Okay,
yeah.
see, I mean, I clearly understand what's
Two
going
different
on in
things.
the
Yeah,
trendy world
yeah.
of skincare. But funnily enough, I get it on my hands. I get
Really?
stress eczema.
You're
Yeah.
kidding. My granddad just
So
started developing
I, if
eczema
I,
on his hands too. Never had it in his
well,
life.
if I've had a really stressful, and I don't necessarily feel it, but all of a sudden I'll start developing a rash on my knuckles. And when I went to a dermatologist about it, she's like, "Yeah, it's stress eczema." I was like,
Oh,
"Didn't even know that was a thing." So yeah,
damn. Know anybody with breast milk?
and yet I have no breast milk to put on it.
I would
What was
send you
that?
some, but it might
It's,
So we've
well,
never
and
met
that
in real
I
life, but
guess we
why don't you
all.
just slap some of my breast milk on yourself, huh?
I was gonna say, please. Um, well, that is also the other question I would like to kind of get is there's I personally, again, not being a breastfeeder, never been around a lot of breastfeeding. A lot of my friends obviously did, but I've been here in Hong Kong for
Mm.
8 years. And so I missed a lot of that of my friends. And then on top of that, a lot of my friends here don't have kids. So I've really never been around a juicy boob. Um, so- which I think it could be a great product name.
I love that.
Um,
Juicy boobies.
but one of the things the first thing I thought was there's an ick factor to
Yes.
some degree.
Yes.
But as I understand it, breastfeeding moms are like, bitch, get my boobs out. It's great for everything. There's so little of an ick factor.
Yeah.
So many people then ask me, where do you get the breast milk for the skincare? And I was like, mate, we're not selling in breast milk. This is
No.
not what we're doing. We're allowing you to turn your breast milk into skincare for your children and your entire family.
Yeah.
We are not
No.
milking people
No, no, no. We
for
don't
their
have a
breast milk. That is
factory
not happening.
of lactating mothers getting pumped.
Mums just in rows with things attached to them. So that was a big question I was getting. So like the minute I told everyone about it, and I would almost say also when I started telling people about, oh, I'm co-owning in this skincare, and then I would be like, and they're like, oh, cool, amazing, what is it? And I would start with, well, it's an interesting concept,
I know,
and
it's
I would kind of ease my way into kind of explaining it to try and say it in a succinct way that doesn't make me sound like I am
crazy.
trading in breast milk
Yeah.
across the world. It was tough. It is tough.
It's
So,
always that was I swear it took me a year to comfortably come out of the closet about
and
what it is that I do because people
oh my God, yeah.
because honestly, like if you tell people that have no kids and no
Mm,
prospects of having kids at the moment, they're like, that's a bit fucking weird. Like, cool for you, but not for
I
me.
know.
And then
Yeah,
you're
I know.
just the weirdo who just brought up breast milk in a conversation, you know?
I know. Yeah. You're the weirdo that brought up breast milk in a conversation. It doesn't happen often. It is sure not a conversation starter. I
No.
mean, it can be. It can be.
Yeah.
Funnily enough, you're 100% like, if I talk to males about this, they're like, I'm sorry, what?
Yeah.
But you talk to anyone that's either had a child
Yeah.
or is, in that realm, got little kids or even older kids, they're like, oh, yeah, I used to put my breast milk in their ears, their eyes, their hair, you know, all over their body.
Yeah.
I first brought it up with my sister and she's like, oh, yeah, I used it on both my kids constantly in like, you know,
Yeah, yeah, like it was like it
conjunctivitis,
was a common knowledge,
infections.
which for me was not at all because when my son he got conjunctivitis like literally the day after he was born because I kissed his eyeball because
Mm,
why wouldn't I? Because he's fucking cute. I just kissed it. Didn't know it was going to
sure.
give him conjunctivitis. Well, the midwife was like, "Yeah, just squirt some breast milk," and I was like, "Excuse me." And she was like, "Yeah, yeah, just go. Have
Yeah.
your husband hold his eye open, and you just go in there with your nipple and just put a couple of drops in there." And I was like, "That's fucking weird." And she was like, "Yeah, you can use it for everything." And I was like, "Really?" And I was like,
Yeah.
"Everybody knows
Yeah.
this?" And she was like, "Yeah, common knowledge. Everybody knows this." And I was like, "I didn't. People I know didn't. Like, what the hell?"
I don't think you get a leaflet
No,
about it.
no,
I think someone actually has to tell you about it. Yeah, and that's the thing. Everyone, I spoke to some of the aunties, because we obviously have play dates here with all the aunties, and they were like everything. Like in the Philippines, they use breast milk for everything. They're
yeah,
like dehydration, like an adult has dehydration, someone will get them some breast milk. Infections, they obviously have the need to find ways to use something in multiple capacity, and
yeah.
they are just like, oh mate, we use
Yeah.
it for
It's
everything.
funny
So
because actually there was
um
one time we can cut this out, but because it's kind of like sideways. But when I did the baby
yeah.
show last year, there was a booth like a couple of booths away from mine. The like I think it was like an Indian company. They were importing diapers from India into New Zealand. Anyway, they caught wind about our kit. And then they were like, "This is." I never heard from them again. All right, so don't get too excited. They're like, "This is
No,
the
I think I
best
know what
thing."
you're about to say though.
And they were like, "We need
Mm.
to get in contact and partner up." And they were like, "In India," and these were men, by the way. They were like, common
Mm-hmm.
knowledge, everybody knows breast milk is like the best medicine for everything. And he was like, they're
Mm.
probably copying our shit right now, actually.
There's a good chance there's a kit coming out. Yeah.
Yeah. So we need to break into India before they finalize their formulation. But they were like, yeah,
Mm.
common knowledge. Every man, woman, grandparent, child knows that breast milk is
Yeah.
the best thing. And I was like really surprised because I was like, yeah, men here don't know that.
No. And
Yeah.
I guess a friend of mine, she's from India as well, and she was saying the exact same thing. She's like, everyone uses it for everything. You have a breastfeeding mother, she is golden. Like
Yeah.
she's just like handing it out like lollipops. So
Really?
um yeah.
That's
And I was
crazy.
like, yeah. And she actually said to me, she's like, you've got to get it into India. And I was like, yeah, that's a really good point. Especially the countries that know.
Yeah.
I guess as we talked about, like the Western countries, I think there's an ick factor. I think there's something in terms that it's bodily fluid, which
Yes.
I don't like saying that
Yes.
particular word,
Yeah.
but it is. But it's different from everything else. So, well, I say that as if people don't do really weird shit,
Yeah. I mean, there's far
from a
worse
trendy
things out there.
perspective in skincare.
Far worse
Yeah.
things out there.
Like we have discussed in previous conversations about things people will put on their face when they think it works.
Yeah.
Um
Coming from your nether regions.
and
Why are we being
yeah.
PC about this? Sperm facials. That's
Yeah. Sperm.
sperm and
Sperm.
period blood. The fuck, people.
Oh, and period blood, yes. And placenta facials, I believe, is the
Placenta
other one. So I mean,
facials. Really?
oh yeah. I've
Mm,
heard that, yeah.
how though? What, you blend
Um
it into
I
a
mean,
soup?
mate, you are preaching to the wrong
I
person
don't know.
based on the fact
I
I only
need to
started
know the
washing my face
technicalities behind all
5
this.
years ago. I will get you the recipe
Thank
because
you.
you are pregnant and we
Solid.
can see if it works.
I can do
If you
something
don't do
different
a
with my
content video of you blending your placenta,
I I will throw
what are
away
we
the
doing?
blender after. Oh my god. No, I don't know how I
Oh,
feel about that. No, I don't know. People turn it into capsules and
although
then
you bring
eat
up a
it.
good point. I was going to say, you bring up a good point. We are going to have to do some placenta content when you. I mean, did the hospitals just give it to you?
Oh yeah, in like a little bag, and then that goes into an ice cream tub. That's what I got it in, like a little ice cream
Mm.
tub. And then most people just keep it in the freezer for years and years and years, which we did as well. And then eventually we were like, well, we need freezer space, so we just go bury it under an
Move
apricot
the
tree.
placenta.
Yeah, and we buried it under a tree. And then it killed the tree. So I don't know what that says about it.
I was going to say, what kind of toxic body parts do you have?
I don't know.
Um,
Oh,
I
so
did
funny.
see searching for unique things, trending, unique, gross
Yeah.
things. Placenta lasagna recipe did come up.
Ew,
Not gonna
you're
lie, and I
kidding.
am, yeah,
Wow.
people, and like there was a lot of recipes,
That's
and I was like, who's
disgusting.
eating this?
No, I hope not. But the
I
only thing
mean,
that I would be interested in doing with the placenta slash cord would be like harvesting the stem cells and stuff like that. There's like
what do you do with it though?
oh, in case the baby like contracts some sort of yeah, hideous disease
Um,
or cancer later on, because stem cells you can turn them into virtually any other cell, which is why they're so important.
that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and so and it's lining the entire umbilical cord, and I think that there's some in the placenta
Hmm.
as well. And so there's businesses, organizations out there. You got to sign up. Costs a lot of money, of course they would.
I
And
could imagine that would cost absolute fortune.
and so you can harvest it, and then they like I think they harvest the stem cells or they just deep freeze the whole thing
Mm.
until you need it
And
like
just
later on in
yeah.
life, you know.
This is why I think we're gonna live like maybe not you and I,
Yeah.
but our children might live to like 200. I'll give you
Yeah,
one:
yeah.
hand, foot, and mouth.
Oh,
Holy fuck! That is by far the worst one we've experienced so far. Uh, You know, touch wood. In comparison to anything else they've had, hand, foot, and mouth is a bastard.
is it
And
really?
so when I talk to him and when I kind of reflect on the fact that, if you have something that is irritating you so much that you're constantly awake or you're not eating or you're not, your child is irritated, I guess, to some
Yeah.
degree, anything that will soothe that, what a product.
Yeah,
Like, just
absolutely.
again, one of my friends actually said I'd pay any type of money to soothe my kid's skin irritation, because it's a life disruptor.
It is.
Like,
It is.
everybody is involved. So yeah, I
It's
think
so
that was
true.
his big thing.
Oh,
Yeah.
what a
We've just
husband.
been,
That's nice.
what a man.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, he shits me to tears. So there's also that. Um, but also, we've just been announced in our school yesterday. There's hand, foot, and mouth
Oh,
in one of
super.
the kids' classes.
You're kidding.
Yeah, thankfully not in Evie or Huxley's class, but in one of the other ones. And I'm just like, oh my
Again.
god, please
Again, I
don't.
feel like we never
It is.
had that as a kid. I remember chicken pox, and that was the extent of it. You know what I mean?
Oh, I had chickenpox bad.
Yeah, me too. I think I still have his
I've
scars
still
here.
got.
Yes,
I was
I
gonna say
saw
I
the scar.
haven't got it too. Oh
Sticking
my
right
god,
out of
dude,
my eyebrow.
some of the weird shit you and I,
Telling me.
aligned on is crazy.
Oh,
Well,
funny.
I guess the final part of today that we want to kind of wrap, I guess, up the conversation with is, if you were to give a kind of an elevator pitch in terms of breast milk, not our stuff, but just breast milk in general,
Mm.
what is it that you think mums could take away, or even everyone can take away from that today?
Okay, so there was this one study that I found. It was done over, I think, 13 different countries with all these mums and their babies and stuff. And they had done a double blind with 1% hydrocortisone, so like steroid cream,
Mm,
and breast milk, just breast milk on its own, applied to all
mhm,
these various things. It went from eczema to nappy rash to dermatitis, I think nipple rash, I think like nipple,
mm.
irritated, like dry nipple. I think they tried like melanoma as well. There was like a whole bunch, like it was really
Jesus.
like a range of skin
I mean, it
issues.
wouldn't shock me.
I
Yeah,
can't
yeah.
remember what it said about. I feel like the melanoma had nothing, and
I mean, it's a nasty one.
yeah, it's a pretty rough
If
one.
we could cure cancer, Sarah, mate,
I don't know. We got to find somebody with cancer.
you
I mean, do you know anybody?
you funnily, well, not funnily enough, my sister
Oh God.
dealt with skin cancer.
Oh
Yeah,
shit. But she's in Australia. Yeah.
it's the
What
ozone.
else is new? In Australia.
Mm. Yeah, you get checked everywhere. I got very suspicious moles, but anyway,
Yeah.
besides the point.
Besides the point. Anyway, so they did the double blind, and it's my favorite study to quote because for nappy rashes, I think, and eczema, it did a better job than 1% hydro, minimal, like marginal difference, but a difference nonetheless,
Mm,
because steroid cream, there's like a certain amount of limitations to it, right? So you're only
mm,
meant to be using a certain amount, like a certain concentration based on what you've got, and usually for less than 7 days, right? Anything
mm,
above 7 days, you start getting certain repercussions. So like thinning of the skin, and
mm.
then you get used.
Withdrawal.
Yeah. Well, with withdrawal happens further down the line, but essentially what happens is your skin gets used to it. So then you have to either up the
Mm,
concentration or up the frequency. So you're already over the limit at this point, but you're making it far worse by, applying it more often and applying like a higher dose. And yeah, and so if you do that for an extended amount of time, you can get something called topical steroid withdrawal, which the
mm.
repercussions can last up to 6 months of like burning, itching, weeping, like it's just really awful, and
Yeah,
it
the
spreads
nine.
all over the place. And it's like people who suffer from
I've seen
eczema
the
and
TikToks.
psoriasis. Yeah, it's rough. It's rough. Like I
Oh,
really do not wish that
rough.
on anybody. And yeah, and people
Mm,
can get like major depression from it because it never seems to go away, and it just like is all over the place. You can't hide it. And yeah, it's really
mm,
really awful. So I would say that hands down, breast milk over the counter topical steroids any day, because you can apply as much breast milk as you want forever and ever and
mm.
ever, as many times a day as you want, and it will do just as well of a job than topical steroids. if for so many
With no
different,
downside.
yeah, with no downside whatsoever. So I mean,
Yeah.
if you've got anybody with breast milk, I mean, just snatch some, make some cream, save it, because it's really going to help you. I mean, I
Yeah.
use it all the time, literally. When my son, he requests it, he's
And I
like, "Mom,
guess
I want
that's
cream." I'm like, "Okay." So cute.
sure. And you bring a good point is that like obviously you breastfeed for a period of time and then you're stopped, but you do have quite a bit in your fridge and things like that
Yeah,
from,
freezer.
over the time.
Yeah,
Um, but on top of that, yeah, I mean, breast milk is, despite the fact that you've obviously got certain antibodies and certain chemical elements in your own breast milk for your own child, from what I understood from the testing that I saw, which was breast milk from a generic cross the board solution can be for everyone, can be
yeah,
for the whole family, can be for people
yeah,
around you. So that's what I
yeah,
thought was really quite interesting because there
yeah,
was an element of me thinking it was very personalized
yeah.
for your child and that only child versus, your whole family, but it's just
Yeah.
not the case.
I would think from a nutritional standpoint, it is more adapted to your
Yeah.
child, but anything that's topically applied, I think it's really good for anybody. And that was the thing I think from when I first started the kit and then started talking to people about it and had people try it out. The thing that surprised me the most is once it's turned into a cream and it looks like a cream and applies like a cream and smells like a cream,
A lot less ick factor.
yeah, slap some on my hand. Like, I want to try it
Yeah.
out. And it's like, it's my breast milk. It's like, yeah, cool, cool, cool. Keep coming. And they use it for their entire family. It's so funny.
I
Like,
was going to say that there's a video you did which is like showing the cream being applied and it looks lovely. Like there's
really?
just there's definitely no concern, I guess, from that aspect, which is kind of like, oh, you could tell and all that kind of stuff, which
No,
is just not true. And it
no.
looks very light and like
Yeah, it is.
super absorbent as well.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
it was
yeah.
that was the whole point of it
Um,
was like I didn't want it to create a barrier cream, which I could have because the original purpose was for a nappy rash, but I wanted something, yeah, that
mm,
absorbed really, really quickly. And that was
mm,
very like, so it's kind of like it comes out as a cream but it applies like a lotion, so it's very like it'll
yeah,
absorb really, really quickly and it just feels
really
actually,
quick.
yeah,
Yeah.
very soft after.
And I guess the one thing I kind of want to put out there is for mums out there, or for anyone realistically out there who has access to breast milk and has any kind of issues that they're currently facing. That includes your own skin, that includes your kids' skin, that
Mm-hmm.
includes, kids that are much older than breastfeeding age, have anything that they've, currently dealing with that they can't seem to get over. Give it a go. Why
Yeah,
not? It's definitely
absolutely.
no downside in terms of getting some breast milk on it and
Yeah,
seeing how it goes.
and it doesn't,
I'd love to
and
hear
it
any
doesn't,
comments
yeah.
of anyone trying it and what the results are.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, I had a mom who didn't have, and I donated a lot of my breast milk because I had too much, and that was before I actually I think we moved, and that's what happened. I couldn't move all of that stuff, and so I gave her like a shopping bag full of breast milk because she had a newborn and she wasn't producing. So I think she fed him a
Yeah.
lot of it, and she had a few bags left over. And I was like, why don't you try the kit? Because she had twins, and they I think were
Mm,
like 13, 14 at the time, and they had eczema, like typical places like behind your knees, in your elbows and stuff like that.
mm,
And she made it, and honestly, it did so well for them, and they weren't weirded out that it was
yeah.
my breast milk either. Which I hope she did
Well,
tell them.
again, I do think the cream is the part which removes it a little bit.
Mm,
Which I mean, it's a very natural product in that sense, but yeah, it does remove a little bit of that. I would even suggest, like, we talk about preteens, and the situation with them when it comes to um using really harsh chemicals on their skin prior to being more older in the teenage years, where you're developing a lot more oils and things like
mm,
that. But that early stages, 9, 10, 11, and they're using like these huge amounts of luxury products or like all the new trendy skincare. Great that they're thinking about skincare, but that stuff is just
no,
horrendous
it's not good for you.
and can end up causing worse skin than they would ever have had prior to that. So
Yeah,
um that's a kind of a nice leeway into next week, which we'll talk about preteen skincare and what to look out for, and making sure that you are well informed as a parent, so that when your kid comes to you and says, I'm desperate for the latest serum, make sure you know what it is and how it's going to affect them moving forward. But that'll be next week. And we'll chat about that.
Excited.
Welcome to the basement.